Are you one of the 5 people that watched the movie Troy and actually enjoyed it? Then you should read the Aeneid of Virgil by Virgil. Before we get to the review, we're going to answer 2 questions. First of all, did I enjoy reading this book? And the answer is yes. And the second question, will I ever reread the Aeneid of Virgil by Virgil? And the answer is yes. Welcome to Whiskey and Literature, where we read and discuss the greatest books of all time, the best stories that have ever been put to paper, and occasionally the worst books and all those in between, because all the stories are ours. And while we're turning those pages, we're sipping those bottles, those finely distilled spirits. I'm your host, Captain Mike. Thanks for being with me. Last year, 2022, I watched a video, Benjamin McAvoy's of Hardcore Literature. He had a video, the 50 greatest books of all time. I watched that video and I was like, I'm going to read all 50 of those books in 2023. I added 2 for good measure to get to 52 books in 52 weeks. And I decided to create this YouTube channel to share my experiences and reviews with you. This will be my 9th review of the year, the Aeneid of Virgil by Virgil. Short story, so short review. And before we get to the book, let's get to the author, Virgil. Virgil was a Roman poet born in 70 AD, maybe, and he died of fever in 21 BC, maybe. And I keep saying maybe because what we know about Virgil is actually according to tradition, and even his birth dates and death dates and everything is up a bit for discussion. He has been called Rome's greatest poet, and the Aeneid is the national epic of ancient Rome. And that's it, short and sweet. The Aeneid was written sometime around 29 BC. My copy of the book I got from Amazon for $4.99, and I can't tell you anything about this book, this translation at all, because I didn't even read one page, except to verify that it was different from the version that I listened to on Audible. So I did listen to this book entirely on Audible. The version that I listened to cost $27.56, and it was a different translation from the book to the audiobook. The book here, J.W. MacHale, is a translator, and the audiobook is Robert Fagles, and it was narrated by Simon Callow, and he did a fantastic, amazing job with the read of the Aeneid. So my intention was to read this book entirely and not to listen to it. But circumstances were that I was reading the book, Jorge Borges, his collected fiction, and I needed a book to listen to as I was reading Borges. So at first I downloaded Jane Eyre, and I was listening to Jane Eyre, and then I went ahead and downloaded a copy of the Aeneid for Audible and listened to it. And it was a great read. So just as a side note, I was reading Borges, I was reading Charlotte Bronte, and I was reading Virgil all at the same time. And if you're going to read multiple books at the same time, it is very helpful that they are dissimilar. That way you can kind of keep them straight in your mind while you're reading them. And you could not get 3 books that are more dissimilar than Bronte, Borges, and Virgil. And speaking of short books and short reviews, it's time for a short whiskey of the week. And we have, of course, the ShortBarrel. This is a distillery from Georgia. This is MGP juice. They don't age, it's non-age stated, but they tell us it's at least 5-year-old whiskey. Sourced from, like I said, MGP. They're from Indiana. This is a rye. This is the Rye 101. They have several different offerings from ShortBarrel. Now the name ShortBarrel comes from, as you have whiskey and it ages in the barrels over time, it does evaporate. And if you leave it in there long enough, or if the conditions are favorable, more than 50% of the distillate in the barrel can evaporate. And so they call those short barrels because they're short of whiskey, because most of it, or at least half of it, evaporated. So that's where they got the name for the distillery. They say they don't use only bottles that were considered short barrels, but that's where they got the name. So straight rye whiskey, 101 proof. That's a pretty nice proof. I paid $59.99 for this bottle at my local liquor store. This one just down the street from me. Mrs. Captain and I, we've had just a little bit of this. It's pretty good. We have enjoyed what we've had. I will say for $59, 101 proof is nice. It's nice. You can sip it neat. Drop a little ice cube in it. That proof carries through into a cocktail. A nice old fashioned with a rye whiskey, 101 proof, is pretty good. I would probably buy the High West Double Rye over this, even though it's only 92 proof. But for $24 less, that to me seems like a better deal. Though if I'm going to make cocktails, the higher proof does a nice job. But even then, the Wild Turkey Rare Breed, and they have a Rare Breed Rye, and that's $59, so same price and 116 proof. I would probably go with the Wild Turkey. Now, if I came to your house and you pour me a pour of the ShortBarrel Rye 101, I wouldn't be sad. It's a very subtle nose, even though it's kind of a higher proof rye. I'm not getting a lot on there. It's definitely a rye. And like I said, I would not be sad if you served me a pour of this at your house when I came to visit. But I think there are better choices out there. Again, the Wild Turkey Rare Breed Rye certainly would be a better choice, I think. But the Aeneid's plot and the story is very simple. The main character is Aeneas, and he's in Troy when it is sacked and destroyed by the Greeks. And he leaves with a bunch of people to found a new city in Italy. The story starts in media res. In other words, it's already began. Troy has already been sacked. They're already traveling, and they're on the sea going to their new home. The story is divided into 12 books. The first 6 recount Aeneas' journey from Troy to Latium in Italy. The second half, the second 6 books, tell the tale of the war in Latium. And that's it. Short and simple. That is the plot of the story. Okay guys, if you enjoy the video, like it. It's free. If you want to see more of my reviews, hit subscribe. In the description of the video, I have a link to all the reviews that I've done this year. And as I review each video, I will be adding to the links below, and in each video we'll have a link to all the videos. So thank you for your support. So what did I think of the Aeneid? Well, when I first started listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell is happening? What is going on? I did not understand at all. And I actually went back and I re-listened to the first chapter, 1 hour of the story. And I listened to it 4 times. And then finally, something clicked. A switch flipped. And all of a sudden, I could understand ancient Roman poetry. Well, not exactly, but I finally was able to understand what was happening, who was in the story, and what was the flow as everything was happening. As each book ended and a new one began, I was oftentimes confused at the beginning, and I would have to go back and re-listen to the first 15 minutes or so of the book. And to alleviate that, my advice to you is to read the book. But before you do, understand what is happening. Read about the book before you read the book. And that will go a long way. If you know the story and know how the poem is organized, then you will understand and enjoy listening or reading the Aeneid much more. You're not reading a Stephen King here. This is Virgil. So do some prep work before you open the book, and you will be richly rewarded. For example, I did read about the Aeneid before I opened it or before I started listening to it, but I didn't fully understand, for an example, in book 2 and book 3. So Aeneas in book 1 is traveling. Troy has already been sacked. So I'm listening to that, and then I'm listening to book 2 and book 3, I'm like, wait, what exactly is going on here? Because now Troy is getting sacked. I was like, wait, he's already traveling. So Aeneas had gotten to the shore, he had landed, and he was recounting to Dido what had happened in Troy. And I did not fully understand this, and it took me a while to really grasp what exactly was happening. So if you do just a bit of work, all that's alleviated, and you only have to listen to the story one time instead of 2 or 3 times like I did. Another thing, you don't have to do a deep dive into Roman gods, but maybe you do, or at least have a basic understanding of who they are and what roles they play. I wish as I was listening to the Aeneid that I had had a Roman god organizational chart, so I knew who was who. Like, who's Juno? Who is Apollo? Cupid, I thought Cupid was, a little chubby baby with, a little play bow and arrow, but no. Again, a little bit of work and you will enjoy this much more. These gods, they play a very active role in the story. Juno, Apollo, Cupid, very, very involved. And so if you understand them, just a basic, it will further your understanding and enjoyment of the book. Okay, to sum things up, did I enjoy the book, the story? Hell yeah, I did. It's full of beautiful women, heroes, gods, fierce fighting, adventure, tragedy, love. I was not at all excited to read this book when I was looking at the books that I was reading this year, but I will be rereading the Aeneid with a Roman god guide next to me as I'm reading the story. And it has strengthened my anticipation to read Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad. And even Dante's Inferno. Honestly, when I looked at the books that I'm reading this year, Dante's Inferno has been consistently the book that I've been least looking forward to reading. But knowing that Virgil, the author of the Aeneid, is the narrator's guide into the underworld in Dante's Inferno, it's got me excited, and I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Guys, I hope you read this book and you enjoy it as much as I did. Short, dense, difficult, but well worth it. Okay, like I said, short review. And last thing before we go, next book up, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I have never read a book like this, a romance novel, and I'm about halfway through it already, and I freaking love it. I'm sorry, but I'm in love with Jane Eyre. Review coming up in the next week or so. Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte. Guys, thanks for being with me today. I hope you're reading something good, drinking something good. Turn those pages and stay thirsty, my friends. Cheers.